Today, we're taking a look at a charming title with a storied past. This is Hudson's Adventure Island on the Nintendo Game Boy. Released in 1992, it's actually a handheld port of Adventure Island 2 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was released the year before. The start of the Adventure Island franchise is actually linked to another game called Wonderboy, which was in arcades as early as 1986. That game was developed by a company called Escape, but it was published on a Sega arcade board, so they shared rights to the game. Even though Sega was planning to have a home console release of Wonderboy on the Sega Master System later on, Escape wanted to tap into the Nintendo side of things too, but since Sega owned partial rights, that was a no-go. Not to be deterred, Escape teamed up with developer and publisher Hudsonsoft to port the game under a new title with enough changes to make it legally distinct enough, and thus Adventure Island was born. Both games were popular enough to spawn multiple sequels. Wonderboy had elected to go into an action RPG direction with its sequels, while all the Adventure Island games would retain the platformer style with added elements. By the way, if you want to see my review of Wonderboy on the Sega Master System, make sure to check out the Retro Reviews playlist on my YouTube channel. Anyways, enough with the history lesson and shameless plugs. Let's see what this hat-wearing island boy gets up to in this port. As soon as you fire up the game, you get a little animation of our protagonist, Master Higgins, before the game title pops in. It simply shows a start option at first, but later on, after you game over, there will also be a continue option available as long as you haven't turned off the game. As you make your way through stages, you have a time meter counting down as the stage progresses. To refill the timer, you need to collect fruits and foods that will hang around the stages, and sometimes you can reveal some hidden ones too. Once the timer drains completely, that's an instant death. Despite some close calls to this happening, I felt finding fruits was pretty easy, and they're plentiful enough. It helps that each stage is pretty short too. Of course, there's many enemies and obstacles to overcome in stages, and if you make contact with them or their projectiles, you're dead in one hit. Higgins doesn't need to avoid his enemies all the time though, as he can find a hammer power-up that allows him to lob projectiles at his foes to take them out instantly, or in 2 hits for some stronger enemies. This hammer power-up is also always available when you start boss stages, as it's required to attack the big bosses. Another power-up that makes its return from the prior entries is the skateboard. Once Higgins hops aboard, his forward momentum is non-stop, but he could speed along the level super fast and outpace the timer, while also being able to jump gaps easily. You can also glide along knowing that if you do get hit by an enemy, you just lose the skateboard and don't die. A new addition to the game was you could get help from some dinosaur friends. With 4 in total, the game used playing card suits to indicate which dino you were gonna get. A heart card summons a white dinosaur that attacks with its tail and can avoid slipping on ice. A space card brings you a dark gray dino that shoots fire and can walk over lava for a bit. Getting a clover card gives you the pterodactyl that can fly high above the level and drop stones as projectiles. And finally, the diamond card will call in the Elasmosaurus, an aquatic dinosaur that's the only one that can survive being underwater, and allows Higgins to swim faster. All these dino pals will disappear if you get hit by enemies or obstacles, but at least it saves you from dying right away. Also new to the franchise was the ability to store collected power-ups at the beginning of each level, if you had them by the end of the prior stage, that is. If you die, you could take a power-up out of the inventory before the stage starts again, but if you game over, all of your items and score will be reset to 0. There are 8 islands to visit, all with an average of 6 stages, give or take. Each stage is pretty short, but the platforming isn't exactly super easy, nor is it insurmountable. The one-hit kill doesn't exactly help your confidence to start, but you'll soon find out that the power-ups are kind of plentiful. Even if you're left with no power-ups, the stages are all set up in a way that you can avoid enemies and obstacles. It's just a bit more stressful is all. The controls were good, but I noticed that even when there's no ice on the ground, you'll get a slight momentum slide while platforming, adding to the need to really pay attention. I found the difficulty of the game to be well balanced, not too hard and not too easy. There's challenge to each short stage, some that could even nearly make you game over, but the challenges are not impossible. Plus, you can continue from the island where you left off if you do lose all your lives. The gameplay loop certainly sounded like it was going to be boring, but it's kept interesting enough in bursts of stages and power-ups. The gameplay gets a 9 out of 10. Our little rotund island boy looks pretty cute and charming. Every part of his body registers well, although his expression looks super goofy. Sometimes he'll have his mouth stuck open in an ooh position, and his default closed mouth just reminds me of Jimmy from South Park. All the enemies had some charm to their design too. Granted, they were all very simplistic in design, and the dino friends were very cute. It was nice that for the most part, they were all distinctly designed from each other, although the fire and ice dinos were just palette swaps, but animated a bit differently on how they attacked. Items and foods all stood out well from the background. It was extremely rare that anything would be hidden away by accident, although it would occasionally happen. The backgrounds at first seem sparse and basic, but the longer you play this game, the more you realize just how many environments are actually present in this game. It's actually a decent and impressive amount for a Game Boy game from 1992. The platforming overlay seems to distinguish itself from the far background quite well. Even though they're often using the same grayscale intensity, that's a sign of someone really paying attention to crafting the details. The graphics get a 9 out of 10. Just about every track of Adventure Island is a boppy and charming tune. It really uses every range of the sound chip as it possibly can. All the tracks fit well with their stages, and along with the backgrounds, establish their environments nicely. The boss fight music though, I gotta say is maybe a bit too generic, but really that's my only gripe. Overall, the music in this game actually sounds like it could work really well for a remix. The sound effects aren't something I'd call spectacular, they work well, and that's all you really need. It's probably also why the sounds don't often, if at ever, cut out the music, much like Game Boy games tend to do. The music and sound of Adventure Island gets an 8 out of 10. This was another one of those school bus game swap titles that we would all trade to play during the ride to school. However, this one even made it over to the lunchtime gaming sessions too. Those short spurts weren't really enough to make it too far into the game, plus my skill wasn't really up to snuff back then. But the game was so charming and fun that I didn't mind, as long as I got to play and scratch that itch. The nostalgia hit gets an 8 out of 10. What started as a cheeky ploy to release a Wonderboy clone onto a Nintendo console eventually became something bigger on its own, and didn't have to clone future titles to do so. With 4 NES entries, 2 Game Boy ports, 2 Super Nintendo titles, a TurboGrafx-16 game, and many more remakes and mobile games, it was safe to say it stood well on its own 2 legs. And it's easy to see why. The reskinning led to more charming graphics, a balanced challenge, great music, and fun game mechanics that built on top of the already established formula. Hudson's Adventure Island on the Game Boy is an excellent island hopping journey that's sure to hook you in once you fire it up.